This is the first section that we've been given. The whole frieze, which is 11 metres long, is now going to be this. And we're going to take it on in stages. We're going to create the first section of the horse, the rider, the gentleman with the umbrella, and the gentleman who's leading the horse. We're going to see if or if Sculpture Studios or myself can create exactly what they want first of all, and we can get it up to the standards and what they envisage the job to look like. From there, we're going to take them on in sections, and hopefully that I can do them proud really, and make sure I do a really nice job and we can build a good working relationship. So this is the very beginnings of this job, and I hope it all goes very well. So I'm going to entrust on Kesh to give me the right information, and hopefully that we can work closely together. On the board, I've just sketched out the first section, as I've said, and this is the first piece. I've gridded the whole thing up, which comes to about 3 metres 500, onto the board here, and I'm just going to sketch it out now and then start to lay the polystyrene. And on the clay areas, which I'm going to treat as the faces or the heads, possibly the hands, and some of the details on the horse or embroidery in the bells, I'm actually going to do in clay, so I can manipulate the clay and then work it up to my heart's content. From there we'll make moulds and cast, but I'll keep you instructed through the whole process. Yeah, looking forward to doing the job, and I hope I do it really nicely for them as well. Now, before I actually got started on the project itself, Kishore sent me some of these images down. It's really just for us to get a sense of the mood and an idea of the culture and their imagery. I also invited the High Priest to come down, and it was very nice to meet them as well. And after speaking to them for a while, I also got a better understanding of what they were trying to achieve for their masterpiece on the wall in the temple. First of all, I made a 4.5 metre board by 3.5 metres tall, and I've gridded it up in 100mm squares, and I've done the same for the actual the small drawing, and here I am just sketching it out now and getting a sense of the whole scale of the frieze itself, for the first part anyway. We are cutting the 100mm polystyrene out with a hot wire. Once we've cut out the peripheral of the actual polystyrene, then we stick it to the image on the board, and hopefully we can get it nice and square, and we leave it on for about 4 or 5 hours to go off before I start carving. Here I am just starting Big Frieze, and this is the first section in the middle where they have the Messiah on the horse with the devotees each side, just leading the horse and holding the umbrella above the head. Carved it out in, or cut it out in polystyrene form using a wire brush now. And I'm just starting to take the first steps in carving the relief, and I'll show you it as we go along. Once again, this is my favourite piece, the actual polystyrene carving part of it. Yeah, I slowly use wire brushes and riffles and knives, and I take it down as a general all over, and I slowly whittle it back until I'm happy with it. Now, as I go over the whole shapes, I'm losing some of my lines from the polystyrene, so I will actually check the grid, check my reference, and make sure I'm still in the same place, because I actually want to make what they've got on their image and not what's in my head. I'm just painting the horse and some of the figure with a fine plaster, so I can actually sand it back a bit later on. Now I'm actually going to leave the finer details like the faces, the hands and the feet and a lot of the hair to very last, as I want to take my time on these and get them absolutely right, and make sure that the images on the faces are exactly what the priest want.
Now some of the faces take time, and we also want to get the right feeling and not make it too modern. We want to get this kind of antique look to the whole thing. So it's important that we kept checking it and rechecking it. I'm spraying the entire surface now with a very soft primer that we can sand back. Then I can spray again with a different colour, sand back, spray again with a different colour until I work up the surface and until I'm happy with it.
Here I am now just making the Messiah's head again, or the headrest at least. The clients changed their mind on how they want it to look. In fact, I'm inclined to agree with them as well. It looks a little bit nicer. It can have a bit of a plume on here and a bit more bandage dress to match this sort of robe area here. So I think all in all it should be a nicer display all round. It's hard for me to know exactly what they want because I don't know the culture very well, and it's also quite hard for the client to actually decide what they want as well until they actually see it. So we produce it here in polystyrene and the plaster finish. They come down and have a look at it, and then they take closer looks at particular areas and they alter it and change it until they're happy with it. And I think that's quite a good way of doing it as well. It suits us both, and yeah, it should be a nicer piece all round.
As I said, like some of the finer imagery parts, like on the head and the hands and the nails and the hair, we will actually work up in clay, and that gives us a chance to alter it and play about until our heart's content. Now when the actual sculpture's finished, I invite the clients down again to have their final say, and if they're actually happy with it at that stage and there's no more alterations, then we'll actually produce a rubber mould, and we actually lay up a grey first and then a red and then a blue, so I know I've got it absolutely laid up and I've got it covered 3 times all over. Here we are. Well, once we've finished the silicone and trimmed the edges, we're laying up a gel coat and then a fiberglass jacket. Once we've finished the fiberglass jacket, we sand it down, trim the edges, and then we'll make a nice strong frame for it, so it just actually keeps its form. And once we take it out, as you can see I'm here pointing, we trim up to the edge of the fiberglass mould. We actually make sure that the rubber fits inside the fiberglass exactly right. Once the rubber mould is cured, we actually set to taking it off the master polystyrene shape. Now this actual sequence is about half an hour to 3/4 of an hour long, and it really takes time, and there's about 65 kilos of rubber on there. It's quite heavy, and what we didn't want it to do was actually go baggy and stretch, so it took time for us to get it off really carefully and then lay it back into the mould. The mould itself takes some cleaning up as well, and we have to make sure it's actually fitting snug within its fiberglass jacket. This is vitally important before we lay up any kind of bronze or fiberglass inside the mould. Now each and every part of the process is important, but particularly this part, we're actually laying in the bronze resin, which is a real bronze inside the resin, enable for us to then clean it up and make a master from. But it's equally important that there's no debris, no dust, and every single part of it is covered, and basically we go over this 3 times in this process. It's also very important that we have the same mix that's running through from the first part of the head on the man that leading the horse to the tail. Each part has to be exactly the same mix in quantities. Once all the bronze powder's in and that's all set, then we go over with a backing coat of black resin and fiberglass, and we're just checking to make sure it's all down really neat. Once the resin is actually cured, and we've got about 5 ounce build up on there, and we want to make it strong but not too heavy, as it's no need for it to be heavy, as it can only create problems later on. And here we are just trimming up and making sure the back side of the actual frieze is really straight and really flush, as this is relevant as it's going against the wall. Once this is cured properly, then we start to add the metalwork brackets, like in order to hang it to the wall once it's in situ. And as you can see here, I'm pointing out, each bracket will go up in set and in turn will then hook against the wall. And here we are, just looking after the rubber mould and making sure it's back exactly as it should be, like within the fiberglass jacket. And then we create a front board to make sure it's held in situ, just in case the client wants to use it again. Now we're actually making a template of the back of the frieze, and it's all in relationship to the brackets that are going to be hung onto the wall, just so we've got a master copy to offer up instead of putting up the frieze. And here we've got some holes within the green pattern that we know where the metalwork is. We also make a kind of carry case for it, so we can actually put it in the truck, and it's nice and strong and secure while it's in transit. So from these lovely images from Kish, just to set up a mood board and gridding up the actual the frieze itself, making a hard frame, drawing up the frame itself, cutting 100mm polystyrene with a hot wire, and then going to work with the knives and the carving brushes and the sandpapers. And here we are, there are a few of us on it, just cleaning up the surface. Kish and myself standing in front of the frieze just before I go into mould making. Laying up silicone rubber mould in 3 layers and 3 separate colours, laying on a glass fiberglass jacket and a frame to match. Taking off the mould and trimming up and making it safe to handle, taking off the rubber mould and popping it back into its jacket, laying up the fiberglass with the bronze and trimming up the back nice and square. Once the cast is out, we go to town on the staining and the wire wooling, and then bringing it up to suit. What we're really conscious of doing is highlighting the detail of the faces, so we're actually adding black so it pulls it back and it gives it a nice 3D effect. Here we are, just adding it to the frame so it actually transports nice and clean and nice and straight.